We have grown quickly, and it's an Asian homegrown brand. Our parent company is based in Hong Kong, even though we don't have hotels in Hong Kong. And Artyzen Singapore is the first project outside of Greater China.
Hello, my name is Renae Leith-Manos. Welcome to this podcast, Where To From Here, featuring conversations about luxury travel and how it's changing in every pocket of the globe. So today we're going to Singapore, to one of the newest hotels, the Artyzen Hotel in the heart of Singapore. I have not been there yet. It only opened in November, but the GM, Jeff Crowe, is here to tell us all about it. Welcome, Jeff.
Well, thank you very much, Renee. This is exciting.
It's really exciting for me too. And what is really exciting are the number of hotels opening in Singapore. It must be a bustling metropolis of tourists right now, is it?
Well, it is. I mean, Singapore's rebounded quickly following the pandemic, and it's so encouraging to see people traveling, and not one origin market. You know, we're seeing a pretty broad-based return to Singapore. The only holdout is still our friends from China, which are not traveling in the same numbers they had before the pandemic. But we're seeing signs of recovery there as well.
Yeah, which is fantastic, really, for all of us around the world. And Artyzen, how does this new hotel stand out in a market, with all due respect, that's pretty full at the top end in the luxury market?
Yeah, we have a lot of options here in Singapore. And that's great because it's forcing all of us to up our game. I mean, Artyzen Singapore is unique in many, many ways. And I think it's that uniqueness that allows us to gain traction, capture attention in what you described as a really crowded marketplace.
Yeah. And look, I did read that you have cars, complimentary cars to shuttle your guests around, which is something unique. Where is the hotel located exactly in Singapore?
Yeah, we're located in an area we refer to as West Orchard. And specifically, we're on Cascaden Road, which is this beautiful leafy enclave surrounded by residential areas.
I know what you mean.
New hotels, but only 150 meters from Orchard Road. So
wow.
It really provides a nice little enclave. You're steps away from, shopping access and everything that goes on in our neighborhood. But at the same time, you feel like you're in a little oasis.
Yeah.
Which is really great.
And so why do you need the cars? Is that to go to other places like Dempsey Hill, for example, or?
Yeah, exactly. When we started looking at ways we could add extra services to our portfolio, we started looking around at what other hotel companies have done, not necessarily here in Singapore, because we're one of the first hotels to embrace this courtesy car concept. But the idea is that a guest comes down, and there's usually a bit of I wouldn't say pain point, but there's a process when you only want to go a little ways. Before the hire car proliferation, getting a taxi that would take you 1 kilometer was always difficult.
Yes.
And even now, the process of going to Grab or whatever the hiring platform is you're familiar with, and trying to book something to go a short distance can be a bit difficult. So what we decided was to come up with a car and a drivers that could transport our guests within a 1.5 kilometer radius. Now, the thinking there was, here in Singapore, within a kilometer or so, it's about a 10-minute trip. And so that would bring the car back to be able to provide the same sort of little surprise for the next guest. So in a 12-hour period, our record so far is actually touching 14 guests in providing this complimentary service. And that's what we want to do. We don't want to lose the car for 2 hours. We want to do these short trips.
Sure.
A little nice special thing, getting dropped off directly from the door to the destination. And in 1.5 kilometers from our location, you can cover a lot of ground here in Singapore.
You know,
For those,
absolutely.
yeah, if
Sorry.
you're familiar with Singapore, you mentioned Dempsey Hill. That's within the radius. Botanic Garden, the British High Commission, the Australian High Commission, the Chinese Embassy, the American Embassy are all within that range. And then going the other direction, you know, we can reach out to the major shopping areas, Ion Orchard, Paragon, the whole Orchard Belt, and quite a few hotels in that range. So it really allows us to offer this little extra service to
Brilliant.
our guests. Yeah,
Jeff,
and it's really well received.
with your accent, I can't help but be reminded of Los Angeles because the hotels all do that there, right?
Well, you're right. You know, my background, I had spent quite a bit of time working for the Four Seasons folks, and Beverly Hills, Four Seasons, the Beverly Wilshire, Las Vegas.
Peninsula, yeah.
It was a common tool. And it's really surprising that hotels here in Asia haven't embraced this as much. So it's one of the many things that we're trying to do that are quite unique. And so far, so good.
Yeah. And tell me about the Artyzen brand.
So Artyzen Hospitality Group started just 10 years ago. So we're a very new brand in the landscape. We have grown quickly, and it's an Asian homegrown brand. Our parent company is based in Hong Kong, even though we don't have hotels in Hong Kong. And Artyzen Singapore is the first project outside of Greater China. So we're now up to 17 hotels, half of which have opened within the last 3 years. So that's quite exponential growth for our small brand. But once again, Artyzen Singapore is the first one, the flagship hotel in Southeast Asia and outside of Greater China. So we hope that this will provide representation. We've had lots of interest from hotel management firms, just wanting to see what we're doing differently. Great interest from hotel owners and developers that want to just see if there's a possibility to work with us moving forward. So that's really exciting.
It is. And are you targeting the Chinese market? I mean, you referred to them earlier. You've got so many, so much affiliation there.
Well, it'll be a part of our mix. But in looking at the arrival statistics here in Singapore, we know that before the pandemic, somewhere around a third of all leisure or tourist arrivals to Singapore came from China. At the luxury end of the market, those numbers were smaller. It was between 18 and 20%. So we're in a position where we do have some awareness in the Chinese market, but we can't depend exclusively upon that. So interestingly, with the first 2 months we were operating, our number one origin market was Australia.
Really?
Really?
Oh, I would not have picked that. I was thinking somewhere else in Southeast Asia, perhaps Thailand.
Exactly. But then, of course, we got into February, Chinese New Year shifted those numbers around. But that said, the percentages are really quite small. The origin markets are very fragmented. So we'll see how that all works out. But yes, to answer your question, China will also always be an important part of our business mix, but it will not be the majority of our business. And that's in keeping with other luxury hotels in Singapore.
Yes. And I see that you're a Greenmart building. Now, can you explain to us what that means?
Absolutely. Here in Singapore, Greenmart is a standardization that's put in place by the Building and Construction Authority. And it's an amazing evaluation criteria. So our hotel, the brief to the architect was to ensure that we were being constructed to be a Greenmart building. And we're in the process, now that we're open, of doing the final application for that certification. Now, what's also interesting here is that standard never stops moving. So we're in the process of applying for Greenmart, but at the same time, we've got a whole team of people working here locally and in our corporate office to make sure we're ready to keep improving our green credentials. And
so proactive in this area, or in all areas, to be fair.
True. Yes, we understand that, Singapore has developed this great reputation for being proactive in planning, especially city and urban planning. And this is a great example of it.
And tell us about your food. And I'm dovetailing also into the Singapore model of is it 20, 30, 70% of the country's food has to be from within the country itself?
Well, the initiative is called 30-30,
I
and
beg
the
your pardon.
goal is to move from today, 10% of food products are produced domestically. So by definition,
Small island,
90%.
a small island.
Everything else is imported. So by 30-30, the goal is to move that from 10% to 30% within the next 6 years. And there's a lot of initiatives to get there. And yeah, so while we're not directly involved with that, we will benefit from being able to have products and produce that are available right here from home.
And so how do you do that? Do you actually have to create gardens within the hotel? Do you have more affiliations with people growing local produce? I mean, there's so many hotels there. I can only imagine that you have to amalgamate to some extent to achieve that goal within 6 years.
Yeah, of course. I mean, a little bit of both, to answer your question. On our rooftop, we have our own spice garden, which the beverage and culinary team are really enjoying, being able to go up and do their own harvesting before the beginning of service. But more importantly is supporting vendors and companies that have started producing here locally. There's all these great initiatives going back to Singapore and how they're planning.
Yes.
What they realized was that many apartment blocks had parking garages and fewer people are owning cars. And nobody
so expensive there. They've made it so expensive. Cleverly so.
Yes, but nobody wants to park on the roof of a parking garage because your car gets too hot.
Yes.
And with fewer cars, that means that space really was not being utilized. So very smart. The government has started leasing out those large sun-drenched parcels of land that are now being converted into urban farms. And that's just one of the ways. Yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I read somewhere that tech entrepreneurs are targeting your hotel. Is that correct? And if so, is the tech entrepreneur globally the new face of luxury, their luxury guest?
Well, I think they're a part of it. Tech entrepreneurs, while they may dress a little differently, they're really like any other senior business owner or entrepreneur. And what we're seeing is quite a cross section. On the business side, we're seeing fund managers, we're seeing people in tech, we're seeing fashion houses that are being attracted to just what we're doing here at Artyzen Singapore. And that's really rewarding because we had established that as one of the basic personas of our typical customer when we started doing the programming of just what this experience was going to be like.
Wow, very interesting. And what was the incentive for you to leave such a high-end luxury brand like Four Seasons to go to something, might I say, funkier and with a huge growth trajectory like Artyzen?
I did my 11 years with Four Seasons in 4 different cities, and it was an amazing experience. But I got to the point where I really wanted to do something with a smaller group.
Yes.
I wanted to be in a position where we could more drastically influence that overall guest experience, commercial management, and business approach. And so I was very fortunate. I was able to find a small company that operated several hotels here in Singapore. And that kind of got me through the pandemic. And then this opportunity with Artyzen Hospitality Group came along. And the idea that I could actually be dramatically involved in conceptualizing that guest experience and how the business was going to operate was just very exciting. So it's a great opportunity. I've been involved for 1.5 years now. So my employee number is 000001. Very easy to remember.
Wow.
And it allowed me to work with our corporate team, identify what our key movers were going to be, and to do some things that I had seen work successfully other places.
Wow.
One of the success stories was a decision we made early on that I was going to interview every candidate before they were offered a job.
Wow. Did you do that?
I did. I have 100% success ratio so far, and I'm convinced that that's what enabled us to reach our manning target for pre-opening, and to create a team of people that were like-minded, had an ability to work together. And while we don't have real statistics yet, I believe that's led to us reducing the amount of turnover. Now, we're 3 months into this, so we'll continue to monitoring it. But it's one of those things that I believe made a huge difference in ensuring we got out of the blocks quickly and with a
Yes.
great team of people.
Fantastic. And how do you perceive the future of luxury hotels? I mean, obviously that would have been part of your thought pattern making the move to Artyzen fairly recently.
Exactly. Artyzen Hospitality Group develops and manages luxury lifestyle hotels. And we really have two brands. We have Artyzen, for which Artyzen Singapore is the international flagship. And then we have another brand called Artyzen Habitat, which is more of a business travel hotel product. And you see those in cities like Beijing and Shanghai. So within this, it was refreshing because all the hotels are new. And having worked for companies that were legacy brands,
Yes.
which is amazing, the momentum they have. But the fact that you could actually do something that was novel and different was really exciting to me.
Yes.
So when we talk about where this luxury hotel thing is going, I mean, we have some pretty clear ideas of the changes that are coming about. We believe there's going to be even greater appreciation for the unique, which our building and service definitely is.
Yeah.
We believe there's going to be a greater appreciation for small, which by definition means you're not going to be able to offer every service which every hotel has.
Sure.
But it means we'll be more appropriate for a more tightly defined group of guests. We believe there's going to be a waning in the importance of the points-based loyalty programs. Not that our luxury guests won't ask for them, but it's not going to weigh as heavily on the decision-making process.
Mm.
And then
Look,
the fourth
I
element.
hate those programs.
Well,
I'm not a fan.
There's a huge conversations that continue to go on. Many hotel operators that benefit dramatically from those programs also are not big fans, but it's to a certain traveler, they're addicted to the drug. And
They are,
it is,
and they're at the top end. A lot of these people are very wealthy, and I've come across them in my work. And I think
they
want to be diamond this and platinum that, and you think, but what are you actually getting, and how much is it actually costing you?
Right. Well,
Right?
and I think what's happening though is we're seeing more and more guests that they've already hit that level.
Mm.
And so it's not as important to them anymore.
Yes.
Okay. So if you travel 50 times a year and 4 or 5 times I don't get any points, that's okay. And because they've already banked in as many points as they're going to use in their lifetime. So we think, while we are a part of a group called Preferred Hotels and Resorts,
Yes.
and they're the largest group of independently managed hotels in the world. And they do have a loyalty program. But our guests are not as driven. I mean, the guests we've had to date. So we believe that within that luxury space, there's going to be the person, they may still ask, they may still prefer. But what's more important to them is to choose a hotel that's really unique, fits their needs, it's fresh, it's new. Yeah, I think just going back to, what's the future of luxury hotels, there's also going to be a rise in the role for the innkeeper versus the commercial manager.
Right.
And that works in small hotels. We're a little over 140 rooms. So I still have the luxury of engaging with our guests every day at breakfast and arrival and lunch, the major meal periods. And when you're managing a 400-room hotel, you do not have that luxury.
Yeah, right.
And I think our guests that are attracted to Artyzen Singapore, they like that. I mean, they
Yes.
don't, yeah, it's just a part of that uniqueness that we've been able to program in here.
Interesting. And what about you, Jeff, when you travel? Where are you at? Are you traveling in luxury? Where do you like to go?
Well, I mean, I like staying in nice places too,
Don't
but
we all?
but it doesn't have to be. I mean, the real key is to try some place that we haven't been. My wife has this mantra. She says, "It's such a big world. Why would I go someplace twice if I haven't seen everything else?" So
Makes
we
sense.
tend to, yeah. So we tend not to repeat destinations, except when we go visit friends.
Yes.
Which we're seeing as more and more important to us.
Yes.
So we build that into our program, where we tend to be museum rats. Both my wife and I are volunteer docents at the National Gallery Singapore, so we have an interest in contemporary art. So whenever we travel, we tend to look for places that have a concentration of galleries or museums that we can go and visit. But then we also do some rustic holidays. One of my most memorable trips was right after my wife and I were married. Less than a year we've been married, and I was working in Penang, Malaysia, and we decided to do a trip to directly due east to Peranakan Island.
Right.
And if you're familiar, you've spent time in Malaysia, the highway system works incredibly north to south. But in the late 90s, it was not as fleshed out east to west.
Right.
So we took off on a Friday evening thinking, I thought it was a 4-hour drive to the other coast, to catch a ferry to go to the island. 10 hours later, after getting lost many, many times, and we arrived, and probably the last 4 hours of that trip, my wife had not spoken to me.
I was about to say, your marriage obviously stayed together.
Yeah, but I was worried. I was really worried. You realize just how small a car can become when you're trying to make conversation and you say, oh wow, did you see that cow? And the response was, don't. Just drive.
It's not an uncommon Southeast Asian story. I've lived in both Malaysia and Indonesia.
Yes,
in Indonesia, those stories still exist to this very day, Jeff.
Exactly. So the good news was when we got about an hour away from our destination, she suddenly started talking to me again. And the next day, when things were kind of on a more even keel, I asked her, so, what happened there? She said, well, I was all upset because you didn't know how to get there. And then it occurred to me that you'd been driving for 8 or 9 hours, and that I shouldn't take that for granted.
Yes.
So that's one of those little great holidays we've done. At the other end of the spectrum, we planned a trip and went to East Africa.
Wow.
Which included a trip to Rwanda to go trekking with the silverback gorillas, and then a safari migration experience in Tanzania, and ended up in Zanzibar. So that's the other end of the sort of rustic or not so rustic experience.
Wow, sounds amazing. And is your wife in the industry or?
Well, she was. That's how we actually met. But
which
she
hotel? Where did you meet?
Well, we were both soon to work for Shangri-La Hotels.
Oh,
So interestingly, we actually met. I had just started working for Shangri-La in Beijing, and
wow.
she was considering a job in Hangzhou. My wife is Singaporean,
Mhm.
and so truth be told, the reason she came out to meet me was because she wanted to see if this, strange man from the United States who'd never worked in Asia could actually do the job. And thinking that if I could make it, then she could probably do an even better job.
Wow.
So we worked together. She was in Hangzhou, I was in Beijing. I moved to Xi'an, she went to Shenzhen, and that's when we decided to get married. So for people who have are engaged in long distance relationships, my wife and I had never lived in the same city until we got married.
Oh, wow. So how long was the courtship until you got married? Living apart?
Probably a couple of years, I guess, because in China at the time, domestic phone calls were really inexpensive,
Right.
and we had a corporate marketing director that was not the nicest person in the world, and so we would call each other to complain about what she was after this time, and so we got in this habit of speaking on the phone almost every day. And to this day, some of our most meaningful conversations are still over the phone.
That's
You know,
beautiful.
when you're in person, you tend to talk about, did the dog go out? Did the
Yes.
aircon guy come to do the cleaning? What's going on in the neighborhood? But for some reason, when we're speaking over distance, we tend to talk about more meaningful things.
Yeah,
Uh,
wow.
so so yeah,
And it,
and that was 26 years ago. So
does she live in
seems to have worked
Singapore
for
now? Is
us.
she living in the same country as you now?
He does. Yes. Once we decided to get married, we
That was it.
decided that we were always going to live in the same city,
Good
same
idea.
building, same home. And but of course, when after she had been gone for 20 years and I had the opportunity to move to Singapore, you can guess who the happiest person was.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now I
Well,
understand why this job is so perfect for you, having all that experience in China.
well, the most happy person in this whole relationship was actually my wife's mother.
Of course.
Right. Yeah, of course. So,
Yeah, so
but
she's
yeah,
come home.
Singapore has been really great. We've been here for 8 or 9 years now, and
Wow.
yeah, so very exciting to be here
And
with
you didn't
home
finish the
here.
story of where she works now. Is she, you said she's no longer involved.
Yes, yes. So she had pivoted into providing training for major hotel companies. So her clients had included Shangri-La and Marriott and Hilton over the years. But now she actually represents publications. Um,
Right.
Once again, still in this time in the Epicurean lifestyle space, but
Wow.
still, talking to restaurateurs and hotels and people like that. So yes, there's advantages and disadvantages to having a spouse that knows your business.
Yes. Can't get away with
Oftentimes,
much.
yeah, exactly. So I get a lot of um, how would I put it? Career coaching, right?
Fantastic. Well, it's obviously working. 26 years is not a small number, and particularly in this moment in time.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
But Jeff, it's lovely to speak to you. And we ask all of our guests, and you can tell me about your day, your week, your weekend, anything. Where to from here for you?
Well, I've declared that Singapore is home. I
Wow.
am not going anywhere. This is it. They've been kind enough to renew my permanent residency. So this is going to be home. And from a professional standpoint, I am excited to be here at Artyzen Singapore. We put together, obviously short-term plans to get our hotel up and running during this first year. But I have another 4 years worth of projects that I want to tackle in this hotel. Where to from here? A lot of new, unique things coming to Artyzen Singapore.
Fantastic. Well, look, it sounds so exciting. I'm really excited. Your wonderful PR staff have already invited me up there. I think I'm coming in July. I hope to meet you, which would be even more wonderful. And yeah, good luck with this amazing new project and new brand over there in Singapore.
Well, thank you so much, Renae.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Take care. Have a great day.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye now. Bye.
Don't forget to subscribe here and follow us on Instagram and Facebook for regular travel updates. You can also hear our episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.